Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Rebecca Pickens. I'm a certified book coach and developmental editor, and I'm host of Self-Editing Essentials, a group coaching program for writers with finished or almost finished manuscripts who are ready to learn the art of self-editing. In that group, I get a lot of questions about the different publishing paths that are available to writers. There's traditional publishing, there's self-publishing, and there are lots of variations of both. So, today I wanted to take a moment to answer some of the questions that I often hear. And we're going to look at specifically traditional versus self-publishing, the pros and the cons. So, let's jump in. Traditional publishing is the path that people are probably most familiar with. This is represented by some of those big publishers that we're all familiar with, Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins, and of course many smaller presses as well. So traditional publishing is probably the path that most people are most familiar with. Traditional publishing involves working with publishers that many of us are already very familiar with because we read their books. And indeed, there are a lot of exciting perks that come with traditional publishing. First off, you are going to have a professionally edited, beautifully designed, and somewhat well distributed publication if you go with a traditional publisher. You also have that established credibility, and there's a fair amount of prestige that comes with saying that you're traditionally published. It's very exciting. And perhaps the biggest benefit is the fact that there are no upfront costs for you, the writer. All of the services that are provided by a traditional publisher come to you at no cost. So that would mean editing, that would mean cover design, formatting, everything it takes to make a book is going to be taken care of by that traditional publisher. You will also have access to bookstores and libraries and media, which is not to say you won't with some of these other paths we're going to talk about, but it's a little bit easier when you go with a traditional publisher because they have contacts. There is, again, that credibility that comes with this kind of association. And so you will have a little bit more access, more doors may open for you. But there are cons that come with traditional publishing as well. And probably the biggest one is how highly, highly, highly competitive traditional publishing is. Many people want to walk this path. And so publishers have to be very selective about what it is that they can sell. There are also long timelines that come with this publishing path. 1 to 2 years is reasonable to expect, but many more years than that can also be a possibility. So if you are in a rush, traditional publishing is not for you. Particularly, I often work with nonfiction writers who are addressing something that's very timely, topical concept. And those people want to get those books out there to their audience as soon as they can. And so often tell me, traditional publishing isn't going to do it for me. With traditional publishing comes limited creative control. These publishers are investing a lot of money in their writers, and they need to know that they're going to be able to make that money back. They have certain marketing standards, they have a certain business model that means they are going to do the things that they do the way they want to do them. And you, as a new writer, are not going to have as much creative control in that relationship as you may like. There are lower royalties, typically 10 to 15%. And this is because they are investing so much money upfront in the development of your book. And finally, and I think this is a step that sometimes writers don't consider carefully enough, you are going to most likely need a literary agent if you are going to submit your work to a publishing house. And a literary agent is a great person to have in your court. These are people who have a good eye on market trends. They understand craft usually, and they are there to represent you and your best interests, meaning they know how to read contracts and make sure that you're not signing up for something that you don't understand. They are amazing professionals and they love books. but they are also highly, highly selective. They need to know that they can sell your book. So they may fall in love with your words, but if they don't see a clear path to get your book onto the shelves, they are going to be very hesitant and to represent you and likely won't be able to. And so sometimes finding an agent can be almost as difficult as finding a publisher. So we have to account for that effort and for that time frame as well, when you're thinking about how long this process is going to take you. So sometimes the obstacles, the cons outweigh the pros for some writers. And so then they begin to consider indie publishing. And there are a lot of pros associated with this path as well. In this model, you have total creative control. Your vision is what's going to show up on the page. There's a much faster timeline, of course. You are the one who is setting the calendar for the most part. You will get higher royalties, up to 70%. But don't forget, you have paid upfront to the cost of production for a book. So you're paying out of your own pocket for those formatters and editors and all the people that will help you make your book. Indie publishing is quite a nice opportunity for people who are writing something that's very niche and has a very specific targeted audience that maybe larger publishers would not be able to market to. If you are doing a personal project, perhaps a memoir, indie publishing can be a really nice way to do that. Experimental projects, something that's really unusual that the marketplace isn't quite ready for yet, but you know has aesthetic value. Indie publishing is great for you too. And finally, I didn't put it on this list, but people writing nonfiction who don't have a large platform, meaning a newsletter subscriber list or social media platform, indie publishing is most likely the way for you to go as well. Publishers don't require at this time a huge social media following or newsletter list for fiction writers. But when it comes to memoir and nonfiction, that is really essential. They want to see those numbers so that they know you have an audience who believes you are credible, who's invested in your message, and who will ultimately buy your book. So if you're using your book to build that following, which is a fantastic business strategy, by the way, I work with writers who with that aim all the time, and it's a really good model. But if that's you, it's going to be very, very difficult to get a traditional publishing contract because they want to see that platform. So you may want to publish independently and use your book to build your platform. There are cons that come with indie publishing as well. The biggest one being that all those costs we talked about that the traditional press will cover fall on you, the author, instead. Also, there's no built-in marketing or just distribution process, right? You're going to be doing that yourself. You'll need to manage production, promotion. Some people love that. Some people really find that work creative and exciting. It's a great way to connect with audiences of all kinds. If that's you, then independent publishing could be a really fun adventure for you. I will say that even if you land a traditional publishing contract, you will still have to do, in this day and age, a fair amount of your own self-promotion. That's just what it is to be an author in this time in history. So be prepared either way that you will be putting yourself out there in order to get your books into people's hands. But you will likely have to do more of that if you decide to publish doing independently. Finally, there is still stigma attached in some circles to self-publishing, and that's troubling to some people. But I want to say that this is changing. Every year, more and more really talented writers are deciding that they want that creative control. They want to be in charge of their messaging, and they are going the indie publishing route, not because they have to, but because they choose to, because it's just proving to be a more financially lucrative and more creatively satisfying path. So if you have concerns about that stigma, I'm not saying it's erased. I'm not saying it's not still, that there aren't remnants of it out there, but it is changing. And I believe, along with a lot of industry experts, that this is going to be the continued trend, that we are going to see more and more writers going this route. Okay, so within indie publishing, there are a couple different ways you can go. The first way is self-publishing. In self-publishing, you are the boss. You are managing the entire publishing process. You can use platforms like Amazon KDP. You can use Ingram Spark. There are so many out there. As the manager of this entire process, as the CEO of your book, you will be hiring your team. You will be hiring freelancers, such as editors, designers, formatters, marketing, whatever it is that you decide you're going to outsource, you will be in charge of that team. And because of this, that's a pro or a con, depending on your interests and your skill sets. But a lot of people like this because it gives them that complete creative and budgetary control. They get to decide who they're going to hire, how they're going to work it with them, and they get to compare different price points. It's not a company telling them how much something costs. They can find the person that really matches their budget. Now, within that, there's another path, and that is hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing is a mix between traditional publishing and self-publishing. In this instance, you are paying a publisher, a hybrid publisher, upfront. In return, they are going to provide you with a team of editors, designers, formatters, so it's kind of like hiring a contractor, right? If you were doing a house renovation, you could go and hire a plumber and an electrician, and all these different people and oversee them yourself and make sure everything was getting done when it needed to get done. And sometimes we like to have that control. But if you hire a contractor, it saves you that step. You're no longer interviewing people and trying to find the right people for your team because a hybrid publisher already has those people in-house and they are providing for the fee that you pay, they are providing you with those services. You will be sharing royalties with the hybrid publisher, but you will retain control. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between hybrid publishing and vanity presses. I'm going to start by saying I have no relationship or affiliation with hybrid publishing. This is just research that I have done over the years because I represent a lot of clients who are interested in different publishing paths, and I'm very protective of them, and I wanted to make sure I understood all of these systems as well as I possibly could. So this just comes from my own experiences. Hybrid publishing, it kind of breaks my heart because I see online constantly in writing communities people going after this industry and after some of the very good people who run a hybrid press and are labeling hybrid publishing a scam, saying things like you should never, ever, ever pay to publish your book. Now, if someone is presenting as a traditional publisher, this is very good advice. This is true. You should never pay a dime for a traditional press. That defeats the whole purpose. But hybrid publishing is asking for it charges because they are providing a service that you would be paying for even if you went the self-publishing route. The difference is they have vetted these people and they have assembled them as a team and they are presenting them to you kind of as a package that you don't have to figure out yourself. And they are doing the heavy lifting in terms of setting that production schedule, making sure all the things happen. So they're saving you research, they're saving you time assembling a team, they're saving you time doing oversight over that process. So if that's something that appeals to you, it actually is a very good service. If you don't need all of that, then then these prices can be avoided and you can if you don't need all of that, then you can do the self-publishing route, which is less expensive perhaps, depending on how you orchestrate all of that. But hybrid publishing, assuming you pick a reputable press, it's not a scam. There are some really good companies out there, and there are writers who get some good results. Hybrid publishing is not vanity publishing. It is not a vanity press, but they do have some things in common. They both require the author to pay up front, like we said. They both offer services in-house, like editing, design, and formatting. And they both appeal to authors seeking an alternative to traditional publishing. So those are the similarities. There are a lot of differences. Hybrid publishing is a very legitimate business model in which an author and a publisher share the risk and the reward. This is a really important point. When you sell books, you make money and the publisher makes money. That means that they are invested in helping you create and promote a quality product because their name is on it and they are looking for profits just like you are. Hybrid publishing is selective. It is nowhere near as selective as traditional press, but they are still looking for a product that has been edited, that adheres to certain literary standards, that is going to appeal to an audience. Because if they are going to go through the trouble to produce the book, they want to have they want it to be financially viable for them and for you. And so as a result, you're going to get a better standard of care in terms of editing, design, distribution, all the things you want for your book. They want them too. The author is going to retain more control and often higher royalties than in a traditional press because you have paid for the services that you have paid for. Alternatively, there's the vanity press. In this instance, the author is paying to publish, just like with the hybrid press, but the press accepts almost anything. They're not going to vet your book and decide if it's a good fit for them. And they can do that because their profit comes exclusively from the author's fees, not book sales. In other words, they don't have the same skin in the game. If your book doesn't look beautiful, if the paper isn't good quality, if there are typos, if there's a wonky formatting, it doesn't matter to these presses because they have already received their money. And so you are taking on much more risk and you are much less likely to get the outcome that you are hoping for when working with a vanity press. Oftentimes, these presses have misleading marketing tactics. They will often present themselves as a hybrid press, but in actuality, they are not. You have to be really careful and read that sales copy and read those contracts very carefully. They're usually associated with low quality output with minimal distribution and no marketing support. Because again, what happens to your book is of less concern to them than getting that sale, selling you their services. If you've worked with a vanity press, I mean, no disrespect. There's a path for everyone. If you had a good experience with a vanity press, I'm so glad. But I do see a lot of abuse and some really shady practices that are not in line with what we want for writers. And so I just would be remiss for not sharing that opinion as well. So how do we protect ourselves in this kind of wild landscape? Well, the first thing is just good common sense. Research any publisher that you encounter thoroughly. Look at the books they produce. Talk to writers who they've signed contracts with. Find out if they are producing something that is of the caliber that you are looking for. Read author reviews online. I've got here on this slide some resources of publications that review these different publishers and will alert you to bad players. Compare the services and the pricing with self-publishing options. There are a lot of different possibilities. In a good hybrid publisher, oftentimes will have different packages. So, for example, they may only publish your book, or you may sign a package where they publish your book and they market your book, and they have different tiers in terms of how much publicity they provide. So, you want to read each of these packages carefully, think realistically about what you will get in exchange for them, and then decide how much of that work, if you're going the hybrid press way, how much of that work realistically could you do yourself? How much of it does it make better sense to outsource? Finally, whatever path you go, make sure that you have a lawyer or a publishing consultant, a literary agent, someone on your side who understands these kinds of contracts, and have them offer a review. Even with a big publishing house with a great reputation, not all contracts are equal, and you'll want that literary agent to really make sure they're scouring that contract carefully, and that if something needs to be negotiated, that you negotiate it. And finally, I am so protective of writers. I never want to see anything bad happen. And so I wanted to offer these red flags for you to be on the lookout for. When you are trying to find a publisher, if you decide to go the indie route, be mindful of their acceptance rates. A press that accepts all manuscripts, no matter the quality, is most likely a vanity press. And so you will want to be mindful of some of those points we discussed. Be on the lookout for a company whose upfront costs seem high and unclear. Sometimes some of the more disingenuous players will say, oh, we can't really give you a quote yet because we don't know how much editing your book is going to require. And while that may be somewhat legitimate, you should have a ballpark figure, and you should have a pretty good sense of what you're getting yourself into. If you feel like that goalpost keeps moving and the price keeps changing, that is a red flag and a signal to step away. Pushy sales tactics and vague contracts are not are a red flag. Just like, anytime you're a customer looking at anything, those kinds of tactics don't feel good, and they're usually a flag that something is not quite right. Sellers who promise bestseller status or movie deals and becoming an Oprah book, these kind of like high, crazy promises. These are red flags. These kinds of deals are very rare and won't be talked about at the onset of the publishing of your book. And be on the lookout if someone is not able to show you testimonials or samples of customers' work. This is also concerning and should be considered carefully. So, with that said, there are amazing, amazing publishers out there, small presses, larger presses, hybrid presses. Self-publishers are an amazing bunch of people who really get in there and make special, unique books as well. So there is a path for you. Do not be discouraged. Just be smart and be aware of all the information out there. Thanks so much. If you have any questions about any of these issues or anything about publishing in general, please feel free to throw a question in the comments section or to reach out to me. I will do my best to answer any questions. And finally, if this video was helpful for you and you would like to see more like it, I'd be so grateful if you would hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, everybody.